Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Politico Future and Food and Farming Summit. My name is Gabriela Galindo, and I am an agri-food reporter for Politico. We hope you have enjoyed our program so far. We have heard from Commissioner Wojciechowski, and we have discussed the fraught topic of how to roll out a harmonized nutrition label across the EU. And we are now going to carry on that line and discuss the subject of diets, and specifically how can we get EU consumers to take up healthier diets, and what role do companies and policymakers play in that effort. So reevaluating the way that we eat has been one of the hot topics during the pandemic. And what we're going to discuss now is, has there been concrete evidence of consumption patterns, the way people eat food throughout the pandemic? And if there has, how can we best capitalize on that trend? I'm very happy to debate with an excellent panel whether Europeans have worked up an appetite for a healthier diet. But before we dive into that, I would love to give the floor to our presenting partner, Herbalife Nutrition, for a few opening remarks. So I would like to welcome Julien Cacchioli, Vice President of Corporate Affairs for the EMEA and India region, for some opening remarks. Julien, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I've been told to stand still, so I won't move anywhere, I promise. It's been a fabulous couple of hours already, and we've learned a hell of a lot, and I think it's been a great program. And I'm delighted really just to speak for a few moments, just to help set up the next panel, which I think promises to be very, very interesting in terms of how Europeans are thinking about healthy eating. I'm going to start with a non-controversial statement. The EU is ready for healthy diets and sustainable diets. I don't think that's going to come as a surprise to anybody. Everything we're seeing across Europe in terms of consumer demand is showing that people are thinking more about what they eat. They're demanding better food, healthier food. And the last 18 months, I think, has just accelerated that thought process in many people's mind. How can I improve my well-being? And what role does nutrition play as part of that? And I think, as we've heard also today, that as well as consumers, governments and policymakers are driving forward on healthy eating, healthy choices. Now, they're faced with burgeoning pressures around healthcare systems and other parts of society, so they have to also drive this behavioural change and help their consumers and their citizens to make better choices as we go forward. So the panel today will talk a little bit about how can we help drive that change. How can we come together to make this change faster and more effective? And I was thinking, how can we match the demands of consumers and the goals of the government? And we're in Paris today, so I guess we've got two ways of looking at it. One, we can go for a revolution, or two, we can try and find lots of different smaller ways, different levers to come together that are going to work to give us tangible wins and tangible successes in this battle towards a healthier lifestyle. I think it's the latter. I think we need to look at individual elements. I just want to touch on a couple of those ahead of this panel now. The first one, and we heard a little bit about it in the last panel, is education. We have to invest in education at young age so that consumers, children can really understand the benefits of healthy eating, and so they can make better choices. And education also comes back to, again, the panel we just heard, labeling. There's a lot of nutrition information out there today. How do we help consumers better understand the choices they're making? Because there is a lot of information, but they need to understand the context and where all of these things fit together. Linked to education, I think, is something which I call community. And that's kind of using peer and support groups to inform, to encourage, to motivate some of these changes in behaviours. And I think that's a very, very powerful tool, and links to education because we learn from those around us. We learn from those we respect. Herbalife Nutrition distributors provide that kind of community, and we see firsthand every day the power of a group of like-minded individuals coming together to make important fundamental changes in their lifestyle. You can't do it alone. You need to do it as a group. The third is affordability. And we've seen questions come through about, it's all very well speaking about the choices you must make as a consumer. It's not always possible. People can't always afford the right choices. That's the fact. So how do we, as business, as policymakers, and as industry, come together to help that? You know, we're very proud at Herbalife, for example, of our global Nutrition for Zero Hunger initiative, where we work with partners and we work within communities to really tackle hunger, food insecurity, and kind of poor nutrition in communities around the world. But we must do more. How can industry and policymakers do more to improve accessibility and improve affordability for consumers? The final point is innovation. Food innovation leads to new foods, new ingredients, new ideas, and it will give consumers more choice. European policies have to support research and innovation in nutritional science, and that's going to be key going forward if companies are going to continue to invest in this nutritional innovation. In this context, we welcome the Green Deal, we welcome the farm to fork strategies, because I think they will provide a real opportunity to kind of create an environment for that kind of innovation, that creativity, that energy that needs to come from industry and policy makers. Our current products are predominantly plant-based, and we're seeing a huge trend towards plant-based products. Protein is a key part of any macro diet, and we use plant proteins, predominantly soy right now, but we're constantly looking at new ways to find plant proteins that can replace soy, that can complement soy, and that can bring people the nutrition they need at that macro level in a new and innovative way. And to that end, our involvement as a company in Project Increase and also the smart protein projects, both within the EU, are very, very important for us. So I said at the start, this topic has to be multifactorial and it has to be multi-stakeholder. We all have a shared responsibility to kind of create the right environment for consumers to get better food, better nutrition, and to help them make the right choices. I want to thank Politico because I think these kind of events are going to be key right now. Bringing together the right stakeholders, the right people to have these conversations is so, so important right now if we're going to move society where we need to go to. I'm looking forward to this panel, so I'm going to hand over back to Gabriella to carry on the conversation. Thank you, Gabriella.
Thank you, Julian, for these remarks. Now we can move on to our conversation. Before we do that, I just want to remind you to tweet about this event using our hashtag PoliticoAgriFood, and don't forget to submit your questions via the Swapcard app. I'm now delighted to present my fellow panelists. We have with us Jerome Remmers from the TAP Coalition, Jessica Attard from Share Action, and Annika Solström from the Swedish Food Agency. Thank you all for being here with us. So I would like to start by picking up on some of the messages that were highlighted during the previous presentation. I think this shows that there are many, many companies that are indeed ready to move in on this sort of healthier food trend that has emerged throughout the pandemic. There has certainly been no shortages of company initiatives wanting to move in on to provide healthier foods to consumers. Nutri-Score has been adopted by many companies and endorsed by many EU countries. But what I would like to know first is what is actually happening on the ground. Has the pandemic actually encouraged healthier food consumption habits and improved nutrition among consumers? Perhaps it is too early to know this for sure, but I would like to know perhaps from Annika from the Swedish Food Agency, what have you observed in terms of trends so far? How has the pandemic impacted how people consume food?
Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's hard to say because we don't really have any hard data about changes in food habits during the pandemic. We have some indications in both directions, I would say. We have, for example, one region in Sweden that reported that child obesity had increased more than in previous years during the pandemic. Others have reported that the fact that people eat less at restaurants and more at home has made the food habits better than they were before. So, but actually no hard data. It's more sporadic indications like that we have. What I could say is that the interest for food and for lifestyle, for a healthy lifestyle, that has increased generally, I would say.
Okay, thank you. So we have heard from the previous panel, Ms. Claire Berry from the European Commission has highlighted that she said EU diets are not where we want them to be. So one of the key ways in which the European Commission wants to capitalize on this interest for healthier diets, it's through its flagship farm to fork strategy. We have, with which it wants to create what is called a favorable food environment to really make it easier to consumers to make healthy choices and to help them be able to afford it. I would like to ask to anyone who would like to reply, how can companies contribute to that, and what role do policymakers have in encouraging them to do that?
Yeah,
perhaps Jessica, I know you're. Yep.
Yeah, sure. So there's absolutely a role for companies and for policymakers, and as many people listening to this will be more than familiar with, of course, obesity is on the rise and causing kind of escalating health costs across Europe and indeed the rest of the world. And what we see happening is that actually this is not a function of human nature fundamentally changing over the last 50 years. It's a function of our environment being very different to what it used to be. And so currently, our environment means that we are flooded with opportunities and incentives to consume more and to consume more of the unhealthy products. And actually today, with the Access to Nutrition Index, we have published a research report that shows of the 16 largest food manufacturers, 71% of their products are not meeting kind of government standards for being healthy, and only 13% of their products are able to be or suitable to be advertised to children. And what that shows to me is that we've got a fundamental challenge within the food system, that those healthier options that we want families, including lower income families, to be able to access just aren't available in the way that they should be. And I wanted to address one of Julian's comments directly. Totally agree about the importance of affordability. Absolutely agree that this is a shared responsibility. What I wanted to challenge is this idea that education is a large part of the solution. Of course, it's one part of the solution, but actually we constantly hear that this is the kind of, there's this huge emphasis on education, and this is very much the dominant narrative that education will solve the sort of dietary crisis that we see. And actually that is not backed up by the evidence, and lots of trials show that increasing education does not lead to long-term sustainable improvements in diets, but rather we need to address that environment, and that means working with environment owners like the food companies themselves, and it means working with policymakers as well.
Yes, thank you. Jerome, would you like to pitch in on any of those ideas?
Yes, so the role of policymakers and companies to make food systems more healthy. I think the policymakers are now in the position to really make the big change and change the rules in terms of prices. I think it's really obvious that Europeans eat too much unhealthy food like sugar, also meat, other products, and not enough healthy products like vegetables and fruits. And it's easy to change this by changing food prices and subsidize the products we want to eat more, and tax products we eat too much. And to be honest, we did some research in consumer inquiries in France, Germany, and Netherlands, and 70% of consumers agree with this, that, for instance, meat should be more taxed, and there should be a zero tax rate on vegetables and fruits. And this is exactly what also the European Parliament 2 weeks ago decided in a vote about the Farm to Fork strategy, that those kinds of tax incentives can help to really make healthy food products more affordable for people and discourage people to eat unhealthy food, which also makes our healthcare system very, very expensive. So we can save 9 billion euros in Europe when we would tax meat. So because people will eat less meat, and then they will be more healthy. So it's I believe very strongly in true pricing of food products. So externalities like environmental and health cost into the food prices.
Thank you for those remarks. Indeed, the question of price is something that I would like to talk about a little bit further, because it ties in really well with our next panel. But now I would really like to ask as well, going back to the farm to fork strategy, I think you've all mentioned that the corporate sector has a role to play in this, and I think European law policymakers have acknowledged that. One of the main, the most recent and most quickly implemented measures within the farm to fork strategy is this code of conduct for responsible business, in which it's going to be debuted actually tomorrow during the UN Food Systems Summit, which is how the European Commission, it's a code that the European Commission co-wrote with companies, asking them to put forward lots of commitments into how they would contribute to encouraging healthier food consumption habits, and asking them to put forward ideas and proposals on that, which look like, supermarkets could put healthier products in preferential placements, do promotions. This led also to soft drink companies pledging to reduce sugar content in their diets, in their drinks, and many initiatives like this. I just want to ask, from your perspective, is this enough? If companies are putting this, playing the game, let's say, is that enough to encourage consumers to pick the healthier choice when they go to the supermarket, or is there a missing element, perhaps from policymakers, perhaps from the sense of community that was talked about before? What could be missing there? Perhaps Jessica, you want to?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good start, and some of those things that you mentioned absolutely can make a difference. So we've conducted trials with supermarkets here in the UK that show that pricing strategies, promotional tactics, positioning in store really can make a huge difference to what consumers purchase. And so they are all important things, but what I would say is that we've seen historically that what's the word I'm looking for? When companies make commitments that aren't kind of mandated, so voluntary commitments generally don't get followed through. And so what we're trying to do at Share Action through our Healthy Markets initiative is encourage companies working with the shareholders of those companies to set real world impact targets. So we're asking food manufacturers and retailers to disclose their current percentage of healthier sales and to set really ambitious targets for growing that proportion of healthier sales. So that could be through a whole range of different things, from reformulation, pricing, all of those different tactics. but we do need to see them being kind of set out quantitatively in robust targets that are put into the public domain and reported on a regular basis. And then we also need to see the investors in those companies holding those companies to account, and indeed policymakers holding those companies to account as well. In the UK's food strategy that was recently published, that is one of the recommendations is to mandate that type of disclosure around that proportion of sales coming from healthier products. I think that will really make a difference.
Okay. Annika, would you like to perhaps comment on that? How can policymakers, from the Swedish Food Agency, I would like to know perhaps what do you need as support from the European Commission to help national authorities or national agencies like yours to help companies in these efforts, to hold them to account when they make commitments, and to support them in shifting their offerings to be healthier?
Yeah, as has been said, I think it's a good start, but as we have learned from history, voluntary measures will not do the job. So we really have to focus more also on different policies that will really change the food environment around the consumers. It's hard to know what could be done at EU level and what has to be done at national levels, but we really need different kind of policies. I think we have to consider all the tools we have in the toolbox. Also, economic and legal instruments need to be considered that could influence the availability, to facilitate or complicate for consumers. We have to consider different types of tax incentives, but also measures against marketing of energy-dense foods, for example. It's still too much focus on the individual level and too much responsibilities put on the consumers, I think. And we all look for a silver bullet, like food labeling or voluntary agreements, but we need those as well, but we also need hard policies that really would change the food environment, especially around children, I think. Because if we have good health education in schools, but then when children go out in the society, when they go to the cafeteria in school or when they go to a sports arena or their after school activities, and then they are met with junk food, it will not change their food habits, even with the best health education in school. It's what they meet around them in the society that will influence their food habits.
Yeah, thanks. And you mentioned we need some hard and concrete policies to sort of make this food environment that we're discussing, the environment where children go out and what kind of foods are they confronted to and what are the most accessible and easiest for them to get. Can you give us some examples of some sort of policies that you think would do the trick here? There's many EU countries who have dietary guidelines, and they have had it for some while now, but we see still that these are not working. What is missing? Is there, at this point, do we know now of anything concrete that can work in terms of policy or regulation?
Yeah, I think, for example, when we have publicly funded premises like sports arenas in the underground, places like that, those are publicly funded. So why should they sell junk food, food that is not good for people's health? That is one thing that actually could be decided at the policy level. So that is one example.
Okay. Yes, thanks. So public funds to sort of help people facilitate their access to food, to healthy food. I think we can't hear her.
Schools and sports arenas, etc.
Right, which this can take us to the other aspect that I wanted to ask about. It seems from everything that we have discussed so far that policymakers are ready to help consumers, to help companies themselves are ready to make their products healthier, but is pricing really the sort of the big elephant in the room, and affordability? Is that the big elephant in the room? Is that what's stopping consumers from choosing the healthier option. Jerome, I know your organization works a lot on this, and that you have been very happy about the recent From to Fork vote that you mentioned to tax healthier products less. What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, scientific evidence showed that those kind of financial incentives are they work in different countries where they are applied. The tax incentive, but also the subsidy incentive. So they can help with making our food system more healthy, but also more sustainable. Reducing a VAT tax from, for instance, 10% now to 0% will help a little bit, maybe not enough. So that's why we also need, I think, subsidies for healthy food, for maybe for low-income groups who eat very unhealthy, to help them to have free healthy lunches, for instance. That could be an option. But to be honest, taxes on unhealthy food is even more important. Because now the half of Europeans are too fat now, and it will grow and grow if we continue to have a liberal food policies where people can eat what they want. And I think they need those kind of price signals, like we know with tobacco or alcohol or energy. There it works, so why wouldn't it work with meat? But we have to convince our politicians that this is the right step to do. And a majority of the consumers, they understand that it's needed, and to help them to eat more healthy and sustainable. And without such taxes, we also cannot realize our Paris climate agreement goals, because meat and dairy are causing 34% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the world, and they're causing deforestation in South America. So we really have to change our diets also for this reason, not only for our health reasons, but also for climate reasons. So I'm happy that more and more countries are considering carbon taxes on products like meat and dairy, like Denmark decided, I think, last week, and New Zealand decided it. And I think we need such price signals to tell the true price of food products.
Right. And how easy are these price policies to implement on the ground? Perhaps Annika, from your side, how is this doable in Sweden? Is this something that is being considered? Yep.
No, it has not been considered in Sweden. I think it is a measure that I'm not sure it would be accepted by the citizens yet. And if it's not accepted by a majority of the citizens, it will not be done, I think, by the politicians. So it has not been. It has been a lot of different evaluations of how such a system might be constructed, but so far no concrete suggestions or anything like that.
Is there any other ways, aside from taxing on healthier foods, that we can encourage consumers to buy healthier foods, or maybe make them more accessible financially?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of promotion, like buy 3 for 2, and a lot of promotion for junk food. And I mean, if we could just stop with that, I think also consumers could save a lot of money by just buying less junk food. So there are still a lot of temptations all the time to buy too much, especially of junk food.
Yeah, perhaps we should have a healthier 3-for-1 option instead. Jess, I would like to know from your side, do you think taxing on healthier products is the right way to go? Do you think more EU countries should perhaps challenge their citizens if they don't want to pay more for healthier products and go ahead with these policies, or do you think there's a better way?
So I think taxation is definitely one way. It needs to be part of the solution. And indeed, in the National Food Strategy in the UK, taxation has been proposed. But I would also say that companies can influence pricing themselves as well. And so at the moment, we see lots of companies prioritising short-term returns over long-term financial sustainability. And what that means is that they are kind of the way that they are kind of prioritizing those profits means that they are much more likely to be producing low-cost, highly processed products because they are cheaper to make and they can charge more for those in the shorter term. But actually, if you look beyond the short term, companies are putting themselves at financial risk if they are over-reliant on the sale of unhealthy products to make a profit. And that's because we see increasing regulation, sugar taxes around the world, and companies who are over-reliant, have too many unhealthy products in their portfolios, are going to get hit by that regulation. So we now see more sugar taxes around the world than there are carbon taxes. And so companies, food manufacturers particularly, who are behind the curve on this, who are heavily reliant on the sale of junk food, processed food, are in the sort of medium to long term putting themselves and their shareholders at risk. And so we're kind of encouraging companies to think about financial sustainability on a longer term time horizon. And we think that will lead them to change their strategies and move toward healthier product portfolios and healthier sales.
Thank you. Yeah, we have some questions coming in and we have just a few minutes, so I would like to address them. There are a few that are challenging this notion of corporate responsibility and government action. We have a question about shouldn't consumers be better educated and what kind of eating habits should they be taking up? There's a question as well that says that government interventions shouldn't necessarily be the first action or the first go-to button when trying to address nutrition. I would like to know, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think it goes onto the consumer? Yes, Annika.
I think that most people on an overall level, they know what is good and bad to eat. I think even if you ask children, they know that they should eat more fruit and vegetables and less junk food, for example. Maybe that people are not aware of how important it is to change the dietary habits for the environment. So I think the main obstacles for bad food habits is not ignorance by the consumers. It's really that we have to struggle against the food environment that constantly, with a lot of temptations that we should eat too much and also the wrong food, which is also cheap. So we also have to struggle against the human biology, which makes us love the sweet, salt and fat, especially in a combination. So I think that's the main problem. It's not consumers' knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, just please go ahead.
I was just going to say that I completely agree with Annika. So we have some quite compelling data about UK families, which shows that many of them actually cannot afford, do not have the income that allows them to afford a healthy, balanced diet. And so it's absolutely nothing to do with kind of education or not wanting to feed their children a healthy diet that enables them to thrive. It is really that kind of food environment, meaning that those healthier options aren't always accessible and affordable to families. And particularly then when you throw in the need for convenience as well, actually healthy, affordable, convenient products absolutely come at a price premium.
If I may...
Jerome, would you like... Yes, please.
Yeah. So what kind of eating habits should consumers have? I think that governments can do more on education and buying media advertisements and on television, etc., telling and explaining about the importance of healthy food and that a healthy diet means that when you are eating food in the morning, in the lunch, and in the afternoon, in the dinner, 50% of your plate should be something with vegetables and fruits. That is the healthy dietary guidelines saying. But we have to be educated more. I believe in it, but this can help also because now a lot of commercials are from junk food, and that's what people see, and they don't see the other alternative about what is really needed for a healthy food every day.
Okay. Our time is up, but I would like to thank all of our speakers for the valuable contributions. We have heard that it is a complex equation to really transform our food environments into something that is healthier. We have heard that companies and their role they can play is really important, and that consumer education also has some role to play. I would like now to thank everyone for joining us, and we're going to have a quick 10-minute break, and next we're going to continue on this discussion on the question of food affordability with a discussion with my colleague Sosha Wanat on food poverty. Thank you very much, and stay tuned.